Steve's not going to make it tonight.
Okay.
Robin was up there, I believe, right? Yep.
Yes, yes, she was.
Yep.
Yep, everybody else was there.
Robin's got a problem with her microphone. She's getting help from her kids.
All right,
Boomer.
we should be live streaming now, so we are all set.
Thank you, Dr. Myers. Okay, so welcome to the Monday, April 19th Amity Regional Board of Education meeting. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To approve 3 different dates of minutes. The first one is the March 8th Board of Education regular meeting found on page 3. Would someone like to make a motion to accept? Okay,
Second.
thank you, Mr. Brown. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Right, give me 1 second to mark off people who are here. That's who is here. Who isn't? Okay, Mr. Belfonte,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo,
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
Dr. Turner.
Yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
nope, not right now, okay, Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Eichler,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Ms. McCrevin.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, that passes. The next one is the Board of Education District meeting on April 5th. That's found on page 10. Would someone like to make a motion to accept those minutes?
I see that Mr. Davis just made a
Okay, Mr.
motion.
Davis, thank you. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, Ms. Hubbard, thank you. Any comments? Okay, seeing none, we will call that roll.
Mr. Belfonte?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Burke?
Hi, I'm in.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Eichler?
Yes.
Yes.
McCrevin?
Yes.
Reed?
I'll abstain.
Okay, that passes. Next one is the Board of Education special meeting, April 5th, found on page 12. I'd like to make a motion to accept.
Make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, thank you. Any discussion?
I have a question about this one. I actually logged in, so I should be listed as attending, but I logged in at 6:49 and you were just concluding. So I thought the meeting started at 7.
It started, I think it said that it started immediately following the other meeting. But okay,
Yeah, I actually had a question about whether that's allowable to do. I don't, maybe we should check that. It's usually you have to give the time you're starting.
that's the next one.
And we can certainly make an amendment to the agenda to show your arrival at 6:49.
Sure, yeah, and if we could just check to see about the start time as well.
So we can take a vote then? Yeah. Any other discussion?
So we would be approving the minutes with the addition of Ms. McCrevin at 6:49 PM.
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Belfonte?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Burke?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Eichler? Ms. Eichler?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Okay, Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That passes as well. The next item is the student report. We have our student representatives with us this evening.
Hi. Okay, so I'm going to start with the high school report.
So on March 22nd, students returned for the full in-person learning model. The high school was excited to see their peers and teachers as some sense of normalcy returned to the school year. Their transition was accompanied by hallway decorations and music on loudspeaker from the student government. Students are happy to be back together in the classroom and to work in a physical environment. Freshmen and seniors worked remotely on an asynchronous schedule as sophomores and juniors participated respectively in a school-wide PSAT and SAT day on March 24th. Several Amity students and community members participated in an Amity road cleanup this past Saturday. Participants collectively cleared all trash and litter from Amity Road. The Amity Science Bowl team placed well at the Science Bowl regionals. They were one of 65 teams to advance to the National Science Bowl competition, which will take place in May. On to the middle schools. The Orange and Bethany students have begun their spring sports. Each team has a full roster of students and is looking forward to competing with local middle schools. The Orange community will be participating in an Earth Day celebration this upcoming Wednesday. The event will have activities that help beautify and maintain the surrounding environment, as well as educate students about the importance of preserving and protecting the condition of the planet. Lastly, music performances have returned to the middle school as band students play their instruments and choir students sing in class. The plan to return to allow students to perform aligns with the most recent state guidelines and was approved by the Orange Health Department. That concludes the student report.
Thank you, Allison. That was great. Does anyone have any questions for our student representative?
Are the people in band playing with those little bucks over the ends of their instruments, or is it just all normal?
I'm not sure. I'm not in band, and that was at the middle school level. But I can go ahead and ask someone, or I assume that it's being done with whatever plan that the department and the teachers put forth.
I can actually answer that question. The high school was able to purchase bell covers for their instruments through funding that actually came through Amity Creative Theater because they needed the orchestra for the production for the musical. The middle schools were actually approved, and it's a plan, I can't remember which state it came from, but you can actually cover the woodwind instruments with masks, with surgical masks.
Oh.
So they're using those as bell covers. And so that is working at the middle school level. And so, yes, that's how they are able to participate with their instruments now.
Pretty big on the tuba.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what they're doing with that. Remember, the tuba is older than the baritone sax, so I don't think they're playing that at all.
Any other questions?
No, but it's certainly nice to hear a lot of excitement in our students. So thank you, Allison.
I agree, Ms. Cardoso. Thank you. Thanks, Allison. Okay, moving on to public comment. Ms. Eichler, did we have any public comment?
We did. We had 2 letters submitted for public comment. One letter from Jeff Gearhart, who is a research director at the Ecology Center located in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And this is in regard to concerns related to the athletic field stadium project. We also had another letter from Diana Zuckerman, PhD, who is the president of the National Center for Health Research out of Washington, D.C. And this is also regarding concerns related to the athletic field stadium project. Sorry, I'm still not sure about. and that was it. 2 letters.
Okay, moving on to the superintendent's report, the personnel report on page 14.
You will notice that the personnel report no longer contains the chart at the bottom indicating the number of individuals who are out on all of the various COVID leaves, and that is because for most of our staff having been vaccinated, they have returned back to work. Additionally, they fully vaccinated individuals no longer need to quarantine if they are identified as a close contact. So we are down to very few numbers of staff who are impacted. So we have removed that from the personnel report. Going on to the superintendent's report that starts on page 15. So I just want to highlight a couple of items in here. The first being the CAS-CIAC Student Equity Advisory Board. Amity is fortunate to have 2 representatives on that board, and they did put together a video project. I believe that was over actually the February break that they interviewed students and put this together. And if you have not had a chance to watch it, I would recommend. It really highlights the work that the Student Equity Advisory Board is doing through CAS and CIAC. I'd also like to recognize the Guided Study Program Initiative. This was a pilot program that was started by the high school school psychologists and counseling departments. And for students who are struggling academically, we are providing essentially an extended day on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. We used the month of April as a pilot to see how that program would work. And if it's successful, we will extend that into the remainder of the school year. Additionally, I would like to just inform the board that the Amity Youth Survey for 2021 will be administered in the month of May. This survey is given every 2 years. We've typically had a presentation usually about the data, usually in the fall once they have compiled all of the results. Actually, it's usually been in the spring because we've administered it in the fall, but we wanted to wait until kids were back. But it's part of a grant that we do with BODAC, and it really gives us a chance to compare from year to year how our students are managing and dealing with drugs, alcohol, nicotine products, but it also the first time contained some questions around mental health issues. And so we are actually looking forward to those results, particularly after the 1.5 years we've been through, and having that comparison. In this year, we will actually have the results from the cohort of students from grades 7, 9, and then eventually 11 that would take it this year. And I would just also like to recognize the Amity Transition Academy, and the students there are returning to their vocational work experiences in the community this week. So again, that was approved through the Department of Public Health, that we would be able to put our students back out into their community placements. And as Allison noted, for the first time in a year, we've returned a full complement of sports to our middle schools and have fairly sizable rosters of students participating. So that is it for the superintendent's report.
Then we have the revisions to the 2021-2022 approved school calendar.
Yes, so this is more of an informational item for the Board of Education. The original night for back to school night was scheduled on I believe, hang on, I've got to look. It was originally scheduled for the second day of Yom Kippur. And so we had to change the date of the back to school nights, which required us to just move them around. We still wanted to have grades 9 and 12 first and grades 10 and 11 second. So both of those nights were changed. It doesn't really require any approval by the Board of Education since that back to school nights are operational. But I just wanted to make the board aware of that change since it will look different from the calendar that you approved a couple of months ago.
Great, thank you. And then finally, an update on end of year COVID updates, exams, prom, senior events, and graduation.
So if you just give me a second, I am going to share my screen and sorry, I don't really need to be sharing my passwords. Give me a second here. Do all of this. Okay, now I can share the screen.
Great.
All right. So just a couple updates as to where we currently sit on April 19th, about 1 year and 1 month from the point that we closed down our schools back in March.
Our attendance currently in terms of opt-outs at the middle school in Bethany, we have 14% of our students still voluntarily opted out. Orange is at 9% and the high school is at 18%. So we definitely have seen a return of our students back into the school environment as we have also continued to increase the amount of time that students are spending in school. The middle schools did start or will start rotating classes tomorrow. Again, it's a plan that was approved by the health departments. We also think it's good preparation for our kids that they get a little bit of an opportunity to do this before they go to next school year, where we're going to expect them to do that, whether it's at the high school or the middle school. Plus, it's going to give them some movement breaks during the day and certainly will help the teachers to be back in their instructional space and not having to move around. A la carte lunch items, we've had a successful start to our lunch menu with the full day. So we will, starting in May, on May 3rd, we will start to sell the a la carte lunch items for our students. And by sell, I mean they need to have money on their account and use their swipe cards because we're still not doing a cash exchange as part of our lunch process. And obviously the more normal instruction with respect to our music. I know I've gotten a lot of questions about the student vaccination clinics. And regretfully, I do not have any good news in this area. It's not something that we can provide. It's something that we have to do in conjunction, typically with QVHD. We were successful in having a partnership with Griffin Health to help get our teachers vaccinated. We have not seen that same successful partnership for our student vaccinations. I think part of it is Griffin is responsible for the FEMA mobile clinics. So I have a feeling that they're being pulled in a lot of different directions. We are working closely with North Haven, who is part of the QVHD district. And so now we're starting to reach out to other providers, such as Hartford Health, to see if they may be able to help us get a student vaccination clinic scheduled. So we are continuing to explore that option, but I do not have any new news on that front or really good news. And then we will have the health departments coming back to the schools probably next week or the week after, just to take a look at how we're doing now that we are full in person for the high school, now that we're doing full days and lunches at the middle schools, so we can just get a little bit of feedback from the health districts as we close out the school year. With respect to final exams, after deliberations at the high school through both the BLT as well as the advisory council and the faculty council, we do have a recommendation that there are no final exams this year for the Amity School District. This is aligned to many of our other surrounding districts, Durham districts and SEC schools. And it really has to do for a couple of reasons. The first is protecting the integrity of the assessments between the kids that are in person and the students who are working from home. We had that same conversation back when we decided not to offer the midterms. The second is making sure that we still maximize the instructional time we have with kids. Because again, the high school is still getting out at 12:47 every single day. And to take 5 or 6 days to just administer exams is just a loss of that direct instructional time with the students. The teachers will look at having cumulative projects that are not necessarily your typical assessment-based type of end-of-year assessment, or they may have smaller, shorter assessments that somewhat resemble a final, but it's not going to be that comprehensive final exam that counted for a certain percentage of the final grade. So ultimately, the final grade calculation for the students each quarter is going to count as a quarter. So I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that and had a chance to ask any questions if you have any with respect to the grading for the end of the year. Oh, there we go. The end of year calendar, again, just providing some clarification. For right now, the high school will continue to plan to have a 12:47 dismissal at least through June 7th, which is the second to the last day of school. We will talk to the health departments about the possibility of full days, but it would be much later in the year, and it would really be at the point when our seniors have exited the building for their senior interest projects and SSLPs. So that will be part of that conversation we have with the health districts when they come back. I do think lunch is going to continue to present an interesting situation. So hopefully they can give us some feedback and insight, particularly after they visit the middle schools. The middle schools will maintain their regular schedule, the way we have it structured, at least through June 4th. On June 7th, they will have an early dismissal day so that they can have their promotion ceremonies, whatever those might look like, on June 7th. And everybody will dismiss around 10 o'clock on the morning of June 8th. That has to be a school day, so we hit the 177 that we're required to provide. But we also have to do graduation that afternoon. So we need to have people come in and then our students leave so that we can run whatever graduation is going to look like on June 8th. So we'll definitely provide more of that communication, but I just wanted everybody to know what we're looking at for the end of year calendar. We did receive guidance from the State Department of Education and the Department of Public Health on what we should expect for our end of year activities and celebrations. And so this may change with the governor's announcement with respect to the May 19th date, but they do still recommend face coverings, social distancing. They did recommend limited attendance at that time or whatever the state attendance limits were. COVID-19 screenings for events like prom to ensure that the individuals who were coming were potentially not COVID positive at that time. Definitely encourage outdoor activities, not having food or drinks served at those activities, and having them occur as late as they possibly could in the school year, presumably in hope that the guidance would open up and things would change, which it sounds like that may happen. They did make it very clear that we would have to be aware of whatever capacity limits were in place as we planned any of these events. So I do have Mrs. Mann here so that she could speak briefly to the board about what we are thinking about for the class of 2021 with respect to senior activities, prom, and graduation.
Sure, up there.
I can come on up here.
Where the stream is. So as Dr. Byers just said, things are obviously changing. This is a little bit of back to the future, right? They change fairly rapidly and without warning. And so when we left for April break, we saw the preliminary guidance, which was essentially a lot of information, not much information, which was, that continuous status quo plan to just have everything the way it currently is, and they were anxious to get information out to schools because we can't just throw a prom together in a week. Our kids have been really hard at work about trying to find a lot of possible activities that they can include. We are going to have a large tent put up in the back parking lot, in our senior area of the parking lot. We have 235 students right now signed up to do either SSLP or SIP, which is great, out of a graduating class of roughly 380. And so many of our students will no longer be in school at that point. We'll see, hopefully, we made that, I didn't want to parcel out the SSLP, the internship piece from the interest project piece, because I have a feeling some kids may need to switch to an interest project because finding a site is kind of the biggest, most daunting task right now. We usually send a lot of students to our elementary schools, and we're not able to do that, totally understandably this year. So hopefully we will still have our students have that opportunity. We are also preliminarily thinking about holding senior picnic because Holiday Hill is doing senior picnic. So that hopefully will be an opportunity for the kids. It's the end, our preliminary date will be during the first week of SSLP on that Friday. And so we still are working to confirm with them, but hopefully the information that came out today about having outdoor venues and people being able to gather outside, that would be a good possibility. And then, as I say, we're planning on putting a tent up essentially for the month of June. So starting on June 1st, and so that we could possibly hold activities such as senior awards night with, again, depending on the guidance, it might mean that the attendees, the honorees are allowed to attend, and we would live stream it for everyone else. So perhaps parents wouldn't be able to be in person, but our students would be able to be there to have their awards presented to them live. Again, that all could change. Maybe we would be able to have it in person and everybody could come. And then we are also hopefully going to have some semblance of a prom under the tent in the back parking lot If there's a limit of 200 people, then we would have to possibly think about multiple sessions of a prom. If there's no limit, then that will also change. So you can see how all of this is kind of, there's lots of what ifs. And then graduation, which is the big one, which, we feel a little bit more confident in that now that we've gone around and we've literally done this for now the second year in a row. So we have a really good contingency plan if we need to of our drive-through. However, we are looking for possible on-campus and off-campus venues that might be able to, we might be able to have our full in-person graduation. So those are all of our possibilities.
It's like
I feel a little bit like the state. I'm giving you a lot of possibilities.
And no definites. We've all learned how to do that this year. And then the last thing I just want to speak to briefly is the plans for summer 2021. If you've been listening to the news, we've been receiving grant funding from the federal government to help support ongoing instruction for our students. So we will be running 4 programs this summer that are really specifically related to the loss of instruction that students have had experienced during COVID. We will have an academy for our upcoming 6th grade students. Those academies will actually be housed at the middle schools. So we'll have one in Bethany, one in Orange. Obviously, the elementary schools will be making the recommendations of who should attend those academies, and it will be staffed by an elementary teacher who has the certification to help provide instruction in those areas of the grade 6 standards that are most critical for students to master and to move into grade 7 with. The high school, we will run a middle school academy. This will be open to 40 students. Many of those have already been identified at the middle schools. And we will focus on math, a double block of English. So we'll have both writing and reading as well as science. And students will be rotating through those classes each day. We will offer a high school credit recovery program that will really specifically focus mostly on math and English, since those are the 2 areas where students need 4 credits to graduate. Our director of counseling has also identified a couple of the science and social studies classes that are pretty critical to also help students meet the credits they need to graduate. That will be an online program that's run through EduSeer, which is the same program that's used by ACES when they've conducted summer school with us. And it will be operating in a hybrid model. So students would be expected to come in person so that we can kind of keep an eye on their progress and to make sure that they're completing it within the time frame that EduSeer allows. Plus the teachers would be there and available for help, even though there is a teacher connected through the EduSeer program that the students can go to for direct instruction. And that is actually an 8-week program that we would be operating throughout the summer. And then Mrs. LaPlante is working on a 1-week re-engagement program. This one is not content-based, but it's really for the students who became very disengaged with school. It would happen in August, right before we go back to school, hopefully one at each of our school locations, and it would involve some counseling services, some support to really try to get the kids who have been really remote and not attending and chronically absent to be prepared to come back for the in-person learning that we would expect at the start of the school year. Again, almost all of these have been either already funded through the ESSER 2 funds, or we're anticipating the ESSER 3 funds will provide the funding support for these programs that we will have. And so that is where we are with our COVID updates at this point. So I guess if there are questions, yes, Ms. Hubbard.
Just a quick question. I noticed you had 40 for the 7th and 8th graders. Do you have a cap or a number for the incoming 6th graders?
We haven't yet because I don't have a rough idea of how many are recommended, but I'm hoping it can be about 10. That's kind of how we visualized it. Plus 10 lets us spread the kids out really, really well. And so if somebody's sick, nobody else is a close contact, so we can keep the program going through the summer.
Mr. McCrevin?
I just had a question with regard to the federal grant money that might be available. And I wondered, I know we've talked about not wanting to use it to pay for new teaching or counseling positions, et cetera, because then it goes away and we don't have as much ability to pay. But is there any ability, if we were to apply for some of these funds, to do it as like contract related services if we contracted out and didn't hire people on? But if we find that students are having social and emotional difficulties, with the year and couple months we've been through here, is it possible that we'll be able to use federal money to address that, or is it not going to be possible?
Yes, I think it is possible. We had checked on that just in terms of even the one-to-one, the final set of one-to-one devices. And again, that's a lease program, and we were able to apply it for that. You'll remember that the ESSER 2 is funding half of the clinical support personnel that will be at the middle school, and that will be over a 2-year period. So we are using it for some of our clinical support. And presumably we could use it for outside services if we felt that either A, those were needed, or that we have enough money in those grants for us to spend that. My understanding is the third round of federal grant money is probably going to have some specific allocations attached to it. For example, like 20% of it has to be used for summer learning opportunities. That's the one that I have heard, so I don't know if it will have the same amount of flexibility that the other 2 grants initially had, but that is an option. Ms. McCrevin, I think our bigger challenge is that everybody is going to be looking for practitioners to help provide those services for students across the state, and I'm actually more concerned about there not being enough providers for every school district and every town who's going to want to have mental health support available for the students, whether it's through a contracted service or through hiring new staff members.
Okay, that's good to know that might be the challenge. Thank you.
Dr. Turner.
How are you planning to evaluate what the kids need? And is there any way that something lower than a clinician can help, like sort of a play-based, have fun, unwinding kind of thing?
Well, so like even this year, we've been fairly successful. We had 3 school psychology interns that were placed in our school that we've kind of said, here, we can use your help. So that we will continue to do that, and I have to commend it's through Mr. Brandt's work with the universities that he's been able to secure many of those interns. So that has been helpful for us. In terms of assessing what the students need, I mean, it's going to have to come through, sort of that one-to-one counseling, or, if you find kids, it will be through, and they can group together. Obviously, you can accomplish, you can reach more kids through a small group than you can with one-to-one counseling. But a lot of it is going to be just going back and looking at those students who are not engaged, who, we have the list of kids that we know have been chronically absent, whose grades have significantly dropped. The elementary schools are helping to identify those for that summer bridge program, and then trying to figure out how to support them. That's what our counselors do through their small group and one-to-one sessions with students.
So it's going to be play as you go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Howard? You're on mute, sir.
Thank you. Did the sending districts provide any information for, the students that might need some help during the summer? How many of them had been opt-out students versus opt-in?
We can certainly ask that question. We we've never done a program like this before, so we're still trying to figure out, and much like the whole year, we're building the plane as we're flying it. So, but yes, we will ask for some of that information. I think, the big difference with the elementary schools is they've been full in person since day one. And so we are not anticipating quite the same level of need with the incoming 7th graders as we know exists with our current students who have been operating in hybrid and partial day models since essentially the start of the school year. So the elementary districts are in a slightly different place, but we also know that students were impacted. So that's why we're prepared to have the 6th grade academy as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, everyone,
right.
for your questions. Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Dr. Byers. Thank you, Ms. Mann. Okay, moving on to item 7, correspondence. Ms. Eichler, anything for correspondence?
We did have some correspondence, a few things. First off, we received a thank you note from the family of Rita Gdansky in regard to flowers sent in sympathy. We received a few letters regarding concerns related to the earlier start of the athletic field construction and related to the track and field season. We received a letter from Grace Giaquinto, also one from Rhonda London, and a third from Isabella Fannenbecker. And lastly, we received a letter again from Diana Zuckerman from the National Center of Health Research in Washington, D.C., and she also had submitted public comment today. So all of these pieces of correspondence had been forwarded to the full board in advance. And that was it.
I had a quick question about our correspondence. Does it also go in the minutes of our meeting after we've received it? Because I'm not sure I received all of those student emails that were sent.
I don't
Check?
Not go in the minutes, the public comments do.
Okay.
So I'll have Ms. Perro double check and make sure all of the correspondence is forwarded to the board.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to the reports, we'll start with committee reports with ACES. Ms. Burke.
Hi, everyone. So we did have an ACES meeting on April 8th, which I attended, but there was actually nothing that was in particularly important related to Amity. So we're pretty much status quo. Most of our students are at ECA, and everything seems to be running smoothly there. So I won't take up the board's time. I don't really have anything else to report.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. Moving on to Hoc School Safety, Mr. Mann not here. I don't know if anyone had anything on that. Moving on to CAVE, Mr. Carte.
Sure. I'm sure we're all receiving these emails, but I did want to highlight, we got one today about 2 upcoming webinars that CAVE is hosting. So one is about on Monday, the 26th, there's a webinar about how the Appropriations Committee budget, which is, they're getting ready to finalize, but there's a little bit of a webinar explaining how Board of Ed members can, help to contribute to that process by either submitting testimony, contacting legislators, et cetera. So that's a quick training on the 26th. And then, believe it or not, the legislative wrap-up session has been scheduled. So that's going to take place on June 14th. And that's always very helpful, even if you don't attend it in person. If you sign up for the webinar, you can get the link afterwards so that you can review it. They're going to walk through, everything that was done during the legislative session so that boards of ed kind of get a heads up of what's going to be happening when new state laws are in effect July 1. So those are 2 upcoming items I just wanted to call attention to. And that's it from CAVE.
All right, thank you. Yeah, the June 14th one is definitely an important one to hear what is going on and what we could expect. Thank you. Curriculum, Shannon's not here tonight, so we don't have anything there. Health and safety, Mr. Mayor, again.
Yes, we do have an upcoming meetings for both curriculum as well as a district health and safety committee. So those are both will be on the horizon and report in May.
Good. Okay, technology, we have a monthly report on page 19. Questions, or if there's anyone here that can answer those questions. We have that, and then facilities monthly report on page 20.
Yep, monthly report on page 20. We plan to have a meeting in May, and I don't recall the date right now off the top of my head. But not the 4th, it's the night of the annual. Early, right? Just early.
Yes.
May 4th. Okay.
And And I think, I did notice one thing on the report that I don't see that is interesting. We took down the building at the end of the way here.
Yes.
2 days ago, right? Or something like that. It's just a few days ago. So that building that was, as my daughter says, a habitat for raccoons that we should have left up for the poor raccoons to live in, has been removed. I think they did it in like 2 days. They were very efficient with it. And it was like there was a machinery and a dumpster for that. I just, with all the talk about turf field and track and field, and there's an item later on that we're going to talk about. Dr. Byers shared some information about, there's a presentation in Woodbridge next week, and there will be some, they'll be talking about the topic of turf fields, and it is next week, right?
Yes, it is next Wednesday, beginning at 5:00 p.m.
So it will be probably live streamed like they normally do on YouTube, but it'll also be there for if anybody wants to see it afterwards. And I think there's going to be different people presenting it, maybe of interest for people. In addition to that, we may have other discussions ourselves, at some point, but I mean, I think we should let that happen first and see what comes of that, and then we can talk about it afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And then now that we're going kind of full bore with the construction, we made quite a bit of progress already. Mr. Brown, are you planning on being the liaison, and did you start up those meetings yet, or?
So the first one is on Thursday at 9, and I'm going to try to get a call in or present.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's great. I would imagine someone from Field Turf would be on those calls as well, or those meetings, or?
Yes,
Yeah.
so Field Turf actually requested weekly meetings as we go through the project from now until essentially it's completed. So it will be Mr. Martoni, Ms. Loomis, myself, Mr. Goodwin, Mr. Brow, and a couple of the Field Turf representatives.
Excellent. That's great.
Yep.
And they'll be-
Tell us with the Woodbridge meeting?
So the Woodbridge meeting is just, it's an open meeting, so it's a public, I believe it's how is it worded? It is an opportunity to hear comments and regarding the 2 proposed ordinances with respect to the turf fields.
Okay,
Yes.
and they're going to be speakers there?
Well, I think again, because it's a public comment, anybody can speak. And so it's open, just like our public comments. And so I have provided a couple of, I can't call them suggestions because I wouldn't know who to suggest, but I have put some contacts, made available some contacts to the Board of Selectmen of individuals who can speak knowledgeably about turf fields.
Okay.
So yes, so they are, I believe the Board of Selectmen is responsible for essentially reaching out, scheduling and contacting those people.
Okay, so there may be speakers on the water and the particles.
Yes, so I'm from rubber and PFAS specifically.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a question about the meetings at the school? Is that like a building committee for the project, or is that a school-based meeting? I don't know if it's public, if people are invited to attend that, or can you talk more about this?
Yeah, it's sort of a progress update. And so, for example, well, we're going to talk about some things today, like the change order. And so some of the planning that we have to do, that'll just be part of our weekly meeting, just to check in, to know kind of when we have to make decisions and when we have to say, bring technology into the fold as we lay conduit. So yeah, it's the operational side of constructing the field. So no, those would not be public or open to the public or broadcast or anything like that. And Mr. Brown participates as the chairman of the facilities committee.
But I'll bring stuff. I mean, you can ask me, if you have any questions, you can ask me afterwards. For
Sure. I'm just wondering that because I'm familiar with the building project that we did at Beecher. We had a town-based building committee, and we were required to file minutes, and it was open meeting law, and we had to allow people to come in. No one ever came, but we did have minutes, and there were legal requirements for it. So that's why I ask if it's a building committee, or I thought I understood. It was more than a year ago when we first talked about when the bid was awarded. I thought the facilities committee was going to act as the building committee, but maybe I'm maybe the terminology is just different for a regional district project, but is there any meetings that are open to the public that are public participation or minutes, et cetera?
All the
Our facilities committee
Yeah, all
meetings
the
are.
facility meetings would be, right.
Right. So will reports from the weekly meetings go to facilities, and then as a board, that's how we'll hear, or how is it going to work?
Yes, that's why Mr. Rao has been invited to attend those weekly meetings.
I'll bring updates from each week and consolidate them. We're not meeting every month, but I mean, these are supposed to be weekly Thursday meetings, right now?
Yes.
Yeah, because there's a lot going on. So for at least a few months, it'll be weekly meetings, and I'll consolidate that and bring those to facilities and then bring them to the full board afterwards if you don't want to come to facilities early in May.
Okay, and I guess the other question I had was with regard to, I know we're going to talk about change order in a minute, but in the model for a non-regional board of education, it was the building committee that would make recommendations about change orders, but it's not coming through facilities for us. So is that something that we'll begin to see if there are future change orders, or we're doing it a different way?
So I think we're clearly doing it a different way, but we're also not doing a building. So I do think, Ms. McCrevin, and I could be wrong, there are restrictions when you do the renovate as new building projects because of the funding that comes from a state for that particular type of building project. But we are not renovating as new or actually doing a building. So it doesn't fall into the same kind of process as the renovate as new projects do. And those are fairly complex, and I don't even know if Ms. Loomis remembers from renovating the high school how that process worked, but it is governed by some specific things that aren't necessarily like the HVAC and everything else that's under the bonding project. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, I'm just aware of the change order requirement that usually it's a recommendation that comes to the full board. And I think it was with the Amity project back in the 90s. Is that when that project happened?
We are recommending the change orders. That's why they're on the agenda.
Yeah, they're for
Correct?
full board. These change orders are for full board.
Right. Usually there's a recommendation that gets them to the full board. It usually either goes through facilities or a committee of some sort.
Well, they did go through finance just a little while ago. So they did go through finance, but yeah. I mean, I look at it as if we bonded to pay for parking lots and there was a change to include another spot or another driveway, it wouldn't necessarily be something that there'd be meetings on that would be open to the public, because it's a bonded project, but it's not building a building.
Yeah, go beyond what was in the bond, the thing that was approved at the referendum, then we're in different territory. I'm sure we can figure it out.
But it was coming out of the bond contingency. It was part of the bond. It's not like we're going out and asking for more money. It's part of the whole project.
Correct.
It's within that.
And
it's fully transparent, telling how much it is and how much is coming out of that contingency.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Later, but I did ask about the contingency and what we have there, so I'm not concerned about that so much, but we can talk about that when we get to that on the agenda.
Sounds good.
Okay, any other facilities, comments, questions? Okay. All right, moving on to finance. Rosa.
Finance committee did meet as we always do prior to this meeting, and Terry Loomis took us through the entire finance section. It should be noted that the AFC did take on this discussion and possible action on contracts over 35,000. We combined some of them simply for sake of time. We did individual discussion and Terry took us through, but for efficiency, we did essentially take the bulk of 8A as one motion. So we can discuss that again.
Okay. So do we want to first make a motion to accept them as one? and then make a motion to accept them, and then we can discuss, or how do you want to do it? That's what we did. Is that what you did in finance?
I think what we actually did was we did number one, then we decided to take number two altogether, and then we did athletic trainer services. But candidly, I see no reason why we could not take 1, 2, and 3 together and discuss individually. So I'd like to make that motion of combining, discuss and possible action on contracts over 35,000, financial software, the multiple bullets under facilities, item 2, and item 3, athletic trainer services. So I'd like to make the motion that we combine all of those.
Thank you, Ms. Cardozo. Someone like to thank you, Mr. Brown. Any discussion on that? You could roll in on that.
We absolutely can.
Okay.
Mr. Belmonte?
Yes.
Mr. Rao?
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Burke? Ms. Burke? Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kevin?
This is the motion just to take them together?
Correct.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Okay, yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Excellent.
that passes. Thank you. Okay, now would you like to take and make another motion? And then we can discuss them or present them, or how would you want to do it? Is that okay?
I apologize. I keep having difficulties over here. I lost you guys. I couldn't see you, but I could hear you. So I'm glad you were able to hear me on the screen.
Okay.
Hopefully I'm okay now.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept all of these recommendations.
Thank you, Ms. Cardozo. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Brown, thank you. Okay. Now, would you like to go through that?
Sure.
Thank you.
So the first one is for our financial accounting system. We've been using Munis for probably 21 years. It's served the district well. There's often upgrades, which we're planning on doing one shortly. They have proposed a 3% increase. This is standard across the board to all their customers, that rate. So that would bring our cost to $76,733.97 for the year. Facilities has a number, so snow removal is year 3 of a 3-year contract. Those are varying rates depending on the amount of snowfall. So that's why you don't see a price listed there. The district chiller maintenance contract is year 2 of a 3-year contract. For train, it's proprietary. Siemens is also proprietary. It's building controls. It's the 2nd year of an annual contract. Site-based grounds is the 3rd year of a 3-year contract. And that is that price is flat from the current year. Safety services, Fuss and O'Neill is year 2 of a 3-year contract. Trash and recycling is an extension of a 3-year contract. They are offering to hold the prices as is. So this would be year 4. We would be going in with them. The cooling tower piping was a project that we put out to bid. We had 4 proposals that range from $32,534 to $67,296. We are proposing that F&F Mechanical be awarded the bid. They were the lowest bidder, and we have experience with F&F Mechanical. They've done work on site before. The athletic trainer services, every year we ask that you waive the bid requirement and award the athletic trainer services. We've been using Rehab Associates for a number of years too, probably close to 2 decades. They were here before I was. And we have negotiated a very reasonable 1.52% increase, so the contract would be $64,600.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gomez. And these were all taken unanimously?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, all of these were approved unanimously by the Amity Finance Committee.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments regarding this? Ms. McCrevin.
I I just had a question about the Fuss and O'Neill School Safety Services. Is that, it's not ringing a bell. Is that monitoring or?
Number
They
five.
provide the
Special
mandated training.
management,
Yes.
and it's the health and safety training every year.
Ah.
I don't
Train.
know. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I would just like to make a comment to the board with respect to the athletic training services. And I would like to recognize Kim Pierce, who is our athletic trainer. I mentioned this at the AFC, and I think she has been one of the heroes of this year that has gone unnoticed. All of our athletes were required to complete COVID screening before they could participate in practice every single day. And Kim was the person who was primarily responsible for checking somewhere between 400 to 500 athlete COVID screenings each day before practice. She is also pretty critical in when we have an index case that overlaps with athletics, in identifying the close contacts and the quarantine periods, as well as the isolation periods. Now that students have a return to play process, she is part of that process. If they do have test positive for COVID and are coming back into athletics. And I have to say, none of that really falls under the purview of an athletic trainer, but Kim is so exceptional. She has taken on that role and has really been somebody who's helped our school district operate. So as you're voting to hopefully renew this contract, I do want to just recognize how much she's given to our student athletes this year and really helped keep programs running for us.
She's worn many hats this year. I've seen her firsthand. And, you know, she does all that extra work and she's still on the field, you know, wrapping ankles, doing all the things she does with all the students to keep them going, keep them safe. So absolutely, that's very important. Okay, any other questions or comments regarding the items? Okay, we can take the roll.
Mr. Belfonte,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo,
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
Dr. Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Burke,
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Ms. Eichler,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Thank you, everyone. Okay, now we're moving on to B, right? Discussion and possible action on the athletic project change order, page 26.
Yes, so we are proposing that rather than wait to replace the asphalt entrance of the secondary entrance to the stadium, that we do that now because it could be dug up and would be better serviced by having the current project oversee that rather than hiring a third party contractor to come in after the project's done and then lay asphalt or concrete next to the new track that, you know, we're just starting a 50-year warranty. So have that all under the supervision of the field turf project. So we're asking to move that timeline up and incorporate under this project rather than the paving project that will happen at the end of all these projects. So we reached out to field turf and asked them if they could give us a price on doing that. And they provided a quote. I went over the prices with them to make sure that it was in line comparing to other paving jobs we've had. And it's a different area because you're working between a building, you'd be working near a track compared to the parking lot where it's wide open. You can bring in bigger machinery to mill things up, take away the debris that will be in smaller particles. It's less expensive than carrying away chunks of asphalt. So I was satisfied with their explanation for the pricing. I did talk to Field Turf about their profit. Part of it was 10%. And Mr. Dichek told me that typically they charge 15% for change orders. That's standard for their company. They had proposed 10, and they were willing to go down to 5%. So this price here of $86,900 can be reduced by $3,950 for a price of $82,950 for this project.
And I would also just point out, because it is sort of buried in the paragraph, it's not just asphalt repair, but it will also include some concrete as, or concrete additions as we put in some sidewalks to connect kind of the entrance gate over to the home field bleachers. Correct? That's correct. Concrete is, yes.
And the Amity Finance Committee did vote in favor of this and also waive the bid requirement.
Someone like to make a motion to accept?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Mr. Brown.
I move to approve that we reclaim the asphalt for secondary entrance and walkways to the stadium and replace the course of the stadium project. During the course of the stadium project, the cost is not to exceed, well, it's a little lower now, but
82,950.
yeah, 82,950, and also to waive the bidding requirements.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion?
Yeah,
Yeah, Mr. Brown.
I was going to say, so I did ask questions about this, and I was, just sort of going through it. And the way I look at it is, do you want to have a pristine, brand new track that's going to last us? How long did the old track last for? I can't
The
remember.
current track lasts 30 years. The new one is a life expectancy of 50.
Okay, so somewhere between 30 and 50 years. And it would be probably good to have everything as new as possible right next to it as well, rather than wait and then try to bring somebody in later at the end of the project to then churn up, because they got to scrape all the material up to get the level back down and then put new material on that. If they do that now, the timing is better. And if they make a mistake, they can fix it because they're doing the track. So it's kind of a, we're having work done on, instead of bringing in another vendor that may not care as much about how well they do next to the track.
Right,
So that was my thought.
turnkey job as opposed to piecemeal owning it.
Right. And the risk of somebody else that you may not appreciate the work that went into the track that just got done. That's all. That was my thought around it.
Mr. President.
I guess I just, maybe some more information will help me to better understand. This is a change order because this was not foreseen as part of the original project, or it's in a different phase of the project?
We did not include it as part of the original project. And I think part of it was we were doing the paving kind of at the same time. And I think had erroneously just assumed all of these things would flow together. But as we looked at the area, seeing how much the asphalt, it's really between the concession stand and the track, how they abut. It really requires finesse that a paving company that's doing a driveway, they're not going to necessarily have that same level. And as we realized that, we approached Field Turf and recognized we needed to probably do all of this somewhat sequentially with everything else that's happening on the field.
Okay, so I guess my other question is there savings somewhere else? Because I knew we had planned, and I think Terry references it in her paragraph, that there was going to be some paving. I guess that's the actual driveway out of Amity. And so we thought originally that it would be part of that project, but now we're putting it into this project. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm following. All right. So essentially the taxpayers will see a savings because it won't be part of that subsequent project. Is that fair to say?
Because they would have both been accounted for regardless of when they happened.
Right. It's not new money though. It's essentially, we had planned to do it already, but now we're just doing it sooner because it makes more sense to put it with this project. Is that right?
Although the cost of this particular paving is different, and Ms. Loomis can explain, but it really has to do with the fact that they're essentially hand removing the asphalt because you can't bring the milling trucks into that area because it's too tiny. So the cost per square foot is more expensive for this particular part of the paving project. And because we added in the concrete sidewalk, which we did not anticipate doing at all. That's completely brand new.
Okay, and so we, long and short of it, this is coming from the project contingency. We're comfortable with the amount of money that remains in contingency after this comes out, that the rest of the project will be covered with any contingency from that fund that remains. Is that fair to say?
I don't know if you heard her, but Miss Loomis said yes.
Okay. Yeah, I did not. I think something cuts out when someone says something kind of loud and then it gets quieter. Maybe I'm the only one having that experience. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, so can we call that?
Absolutely. So Mr. Belfonte,
Yes.
Mr. Brow,
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo,
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
Dr. Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Burke,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Eichler,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Previn,
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, that passes. So I know, so that handled change order two, and I know on page 27, it looks like there's a number of motions we have to make, is that correct? That we have to
So
do
that took care of the first motion, and
Okay.
so we have a second motion, which is to actually transfer the money from the bond contingency to the athletic project account. And obviously the amount would be slightly different. It would be the 82,950 that you just approved to award.
Okay,
Make a motion
thank you.
to transfer from bond contingency account to the athletic project account, reclaiming the asphalt for the secondary entrance and walkways of the stadium and replaced during the course of the stadium project at Amity High School. The amount of, let's see, 82,950.
Thank you. We have a second.
I see Mr. Davis.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Can I have just a quick question? These two accounts are both part of capital non-recurring, or are they operating accounts?
Capital non-reoccurring.
That's what I thought. Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions?
Just at the bottom of that page 11, do those three lines need to like add up to this new number, 82,950?
Different motion, Mr. Howard. We'll get to that one.
Thank you very much.
Okay, seeing no others, overall,
Mr. Belfonte,
yes.
Mr. Brow,
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo,
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
Dr. Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Burke,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Eichler,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Previn,
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Okay, that passes, thank you. Okay, moving on to the HVAC project.
So last month I brought before you the contract award to Save More, which was the bid for the HVAC, and then we had some alternates added on to that. So we were connecting some new fans with new equipment rather than some 20-year-old fans. So there was an explanation of where that money would come from, but there wasn't the formal request to transfer the funds. So this is just correcting that oversight.
I see, okay. Would someone like to make a motion found on the bottom of page 27?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make that motion to transfer from the bond cost of issuance account and the contingency account to the HVAC project account as delineated in the amendment.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Turner, Dr. Turner, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call that roll.
Mr. Belfonte,
Yes.
Mr. Brow,
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo,
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
Dr. Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Burke,
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Eichler,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Previn,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, that passes. Moving on to item C, the discussion of monthly financial statements found on page 28.
So you can see in your packet that there was a $452,000 change from last month. And I'd just like to preference the report with some reminders. It's easy to look at the budget and think that this is a large surplus and why does that happen? But just to remind folks that, when the budget was developed, we hadn't even uttered the words COVID-19. And when the budget was approved by the board last year, we didn't know how we were finishing the fiscal year of 20, let alone how to operate in this fiscal year. We know how those special exceptions for EPSLA and all those remote working would impact the budget. This month, we received the special ed revenue for excess costs. That is one of the most normal things that happens in a budget. We had students who were not budgeted for either the particular plan that they ended up being in this year, or they were new residents to the district. So that revenue wasn't budgeted for. That's $353,000 more that we did not anticipate. Now, we have expenses offsetting that, but since that report was filed in March, some of those student situations have changed and they've come back into the district. So we won't see those full expenses, but we have received the full money from the state. But the state will reckon with us and we'll reconcile that in August, and it'll impact next year's budget. It'll be a hole in revenue in next year's budget. We also didn't know that, what kind of state and federal funding there would be to help us get through COVID. Currently, we've applied 3 grants, $322,000 towards this budget to offset some of the costs that we have incurred. Because we didn't know that in July when we started this fiscal year, we were very conservative and held 15% from accounts, which was nearly $1 million from staff, to help fund the unknown things. The staff, I will say, was very judicious in their spending. We had a lot of remote days, we had hybrid days. They just didn't run out and spend their budgets. They kind of see what did they need to operate in this environment. So they were mindful of spending. Medical insurance, again, a very hard year to predict. Costs are down. Even for our renewal for next year, Anthem had to rewrite some of their underwriting practices in order to come up with how to estimate what costs would be, because this is a very unusual year, not just for Amity, obviously, across the nation, the world, as far as health claims go. So I would just say that in a very, untypical year, the staff across the board worked tirelessly to make sure that we, were good stewards of the taxpayers' money and didn't spend what we didn't need to spend and took advantage of every grant opportunity that we could. So it is, the surplus is growing, but I think, you can see how that would happen in this year. So just to go forward, I talked about the revenue, staff salaries. This is the time of year, certified salaries, where we're starting to see some unpaid leave of absences. We did not use the amount of homebound tutoring that we normally do, so there's funds there. We are recognizing some of the fall and winter limitations for student activities and sports that were not able to operate in their full capacity. As we, went through the year, we were trying to estimate how much all these substitute costs were, but again, because staff a lot were allowed to work remotely, we did not see that as high as we expected. As far as classified staff, we were not able to roll out our student help desk, which we had budgeted $21,000 for. That was just a function of not having enough students in there and not being able to allow them to be close together and whatnot. And we did try to see what we could get going this spring, but we just didn't have the right age group students and those who had free time to really be in there. So we will get that off the ground next year, but it is a savings this year. And overtime, because our buildings were not open at night, we're just starting to do some of those night activities. So a lot of overtime was omitted from expenses. So health insurance, we're looking at right now 81.5% of claims and a balance of approximately $800,000 there. You see your typical special ed fluctuations where we talk about, there's a lot of change month to month. So you save on transportation and tuition when you're fortunate enough to, bring students back into the school district. You will see later on that I will ask for a transfer for some supplementary services and some data so that we have good data on how they're succeeding in the district. So we trade off some costs, some of the savings we get in order to function well in the district. The food service, at the time I prepared the report, the estimate was that it would be a little over $200,000 in deficit for the year. I had a meeting with the Director of Dining Services late in the week last week, and due to the changes, as everything is changing as we're going, that with March having some full in-person days with the middle school, that we now estimate that that's going to be about $156,000. So that's helpful. That's going in the right direction. We're, as Dr. Byers mentioned earlier, we're opening up Olive Park, so maybe that'll help a little bit. And then the ESSER funds, we're applying $21,000 from the ESSER funds towards the deficit. So that is less that we will have to take from the operating budget. Just as a note, the overall snow removal budget for the year was $26,325 over budget. There was a small bill for about $3,000 in March. We have some new equipment and student and replacement equipments that we're going to come in May and ask for specific budget transfers and awards of contracts. These are for devices. This is the first student lease that we took out, first device for students that we took out. The lease is expiring this year. It's the first time we're turning those devices back in. So we really don't have an estimate of what the condition those final products are in. So we're estimating that about $20,000, and if we don't turn them in because they're partially broken, we can keep them for parts. So we'll put, good use to those devices that we keep. Because of the remote work and with that being probably some part of our future, that there's a number of support staff that needs devices. You'll see a request later on for a budget transfer for the science textbooks that was earmarked as an end of year purchase when it was removed from the budget. That book was the curriculum committee and the board approved, I believe, back in February. So it's not in the 21-22 budget. So rather than have to wait another whole year and a half to get those books, we'd like to get those now. And that is forecast for this month.
Well, thank you for that explanation. That was definitely helpful to highlight and kind of go back a year, especially the fact that the budget was developed well before COVID, and when things started happening last year, a lot of assumptions had to be made, and I think you guys did an excellent job of explaining the reason behind the changes that you wanted to make, or the preemptive decisions that were put in front of us. And you have the support of the board that we were all behind you on that. So you guys did a heck of a job in a very difficult year, and we're not done yet. So we've got a few more months of this fiscal year. We're looking forward to the future, but just be assured that certainly everything you did and the assumptions you made were all in good faith and a very good effort, and the knowledge that you had, you imparted upon us, and we agreed with you. So this is the outcome, and we'll see what the final one is in a few months. So, any other questions or comments regarding the financial statements? Move on. The approved transfers under 3,000 on page 59.
Just was a comment at the finance committee that was more activity in March, and that's because we give them the deadline of if you need it for this year, it's time to get that order in. So.
Someone made a comment, for those that might have been you, that you were happy to see some money being spent on musical instruments.
Exactly. Actually, I thought it was all great. It's like, oh, look, we're getting back to actually teaching and learning. It's wonderful. And that's what we also saw right earlier with the students. It's like, it's so wonderful to see typical student activity. So we're glad that the instruments are wearing out. It's great.
And then the baritone sax that's 50 years old, which almost is as long as a track is going to last. So
it was due.
It was due.
So we can get the next one then.
Guys, I'm sorry, but all of a sudden I'm having a lot of trouble hearing the conversation in the room.
All right, we'll be sure to speak up because that's not the only.
And then we're going to item 8, the discussion of possible action on budget transfers of $3,000 or more found on page 61.
So we have a number of transfers here. They were all approved by the finance committee.
And I believe finance also considered or made a motion to take them all as one. So I don't know if the board would wish to do the same.
I would be happy to make that motion. The finance committee did take them all together and we did approve, but it's one thing at a time. I'd like to make a motion that we combine all these into one vote.
Okay, Turner, thank you. Call the roll on that. Then.
As long as there's no discussion.
Any discussion on that?
All right, Mr. Belfonte?
Yes.
Mr. Rao?
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Burke?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Evans? Yes.
Yes.
So we will take them as one, and now we need a motion to accept them.
I'll make that motion that we accept all the
Thank you.
transfers.
We have a second. Ms. Hubbard, thank you. Okay, any discussion on that? Do we want to highlight them?
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's probably a good idea.
So staff development, because there was limited or no travel this year, there's some money on the travel line and to have more presenters for professional development. Music, we talked about that 50-year-old baritone sax. Science textbooks that, as I mentioned earlier, was an end of year purchase designated when we removed it from the budget. And Mr. Amato, the department chair, is the person who really was very careful about how he spent his money. So he has some funds available for some of the things he needs. The technology is a Prometheum, a smart board that they use in the science departments beyond repair. So he has money that he can use to purchase that. Again, the labs were very greatly impacted by the way that we operated this year. So that's why some funds are available. Number 5 is special ed. This is how, when we save on tuition and transportation, we bring students back in. Sometimes they need some additional support, either through consulting services. And then we also want some way to track and have data as to how these students do when they come back into the district. So that's what number 5 is about. 6 is the piping on the cooling tower, which we approved the contract to F&F Mechanical earlier in the packet. And COVID, those are shoring up the COVID accounts that started the year without a budget, but just a mechanism to track expenses. And now we're transferring some of that 15% that we held back from accounts to cover those costs.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions regarding this? Any discussion?
Mr. Belfonte?
Yes.
Mr. Rao?
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Eichler?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Evan?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Then we have some informational information. 68.
Yes, I've included a report which I'll include in each month, and it's really just listing the invoices that we've paid so far out of the 2020 bond, inclusive whether it's facilities or the stadium projects, the field projects, or the cost of issuance. So that's just informational, so you know how the funding's going in there. That's all coming out. All those funds are held in a capital non-reoccurring, and it's all from the 2020 bond that we took out. And I'll try to make the print smaller next time.
Okay.
So the pension amendment is, we finished negotiations with the administrative assistants. That was the last group to line up the employee contributions to the pension plan. The pension plan closed back in 2016 to new participants. This increase by the employees putting in a smaller amount more to a 4% threshold helps offset the employer costs. Requires an amendment to the plan document, which our attorneys drafted, and if the board approves, Dr. Byers will sign and it will become part of the pension plan.
Someone like to make a motion to accept that?
I would be glad to make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Cardoza.
Move to modify the Amity Regional High School District Number 5 pension plan with the proposed amendment and authorize the superintendent of schools to sign the amendment document.
Mr. Brown seconds. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call that.
Mr. Belfonte?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Burke?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes. And moving on to policy. Mr. Howard, Dr. Byers.
And
First reads.
Our next meeting will be on Monday, the 26th at 5:30. And the policies below are from our meeting back March 23rd.
So since Mr. DeMayo isn't here, I will just remind everybody the first reads are the good time to provide us feedback, because that way we can bring them back to policy and work on them either as a policy committee or in consultation with CABE or the attorneys. We have 3 first read policies. The first is the Title I Parent and Family Engagement. This actually came through to us. We had revised this fairly recently, and then the CABE Policy Services had provided us with an updated version of it. That's a little more streamlined and a little more, I don't want to say simplistic, but I would say clean. The majority of this policy, or what we had, did move into regulations. Dr. McPadden worked on those to ensure that the regulations are actually things that we are doing and meeting with our Title I families. And this is a mandated policy that we do have to have in place as part of the board's policy manual. The second policy is a fairly significant revision to our nepotism policy that we currently have. The current existing policy really only addressed the employment of relatives of board members. It did not address the employment of relatives of administrators and kind of how that is all structured. We actually borrowed this policy from another school district that I know it had been reviewed by an attorney. And I think where I recommend this policy is the language under number 1 for both the relatives of board members and the relatives of administrators. And that is if there is the employment of an individual who is related, if it is in the best interest of the district, the board has the ability to employ that person by board vote. So it really helps us so that we don't exclude exceptional candidates simply because they are relatives of board members or of administrators. This also has a clause that anybody who is currently employed under this policy, this doesn't apply to them. This is only going forward. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one. My apologies. The minority recruitment plan, that's 4111.3. That's on page 74. This was part of our review of personnel, and it was one that we had brought to policy, but then we amended the policy that had been provided to us to just make again, a more simplistic policy. That is our commitment to minority recruitment. And we actually borrowed a regulation from Bethany, who has a regulation in place. So that is partnered with this policy and set and ready to go. So those are our 3 first reads that we have tonight.
So your family member has to reside in the same house as the candidate? Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Well, it can, but it can also be children, even if they, like older children, but they're not living in the same house.
Okay.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
On the minority recruitment plan, why the particular language, racial, ethnic, and economic backgrounds? It seems to me that you might strike that and just say different backgrounds, or if you want to enumerate, why leaving out LGBT?
So this is actually part of the state's minority recruitment plan, and it really is to address essentially the racial backgrounds that exist primarily between the city schools and the composition of the teaching and learning staff there versus the students who are in attendance. The state itself has a fairly significant minority recruitment program that is more focused towards racial diversity than it is towards any of the other typically identified groups, and that is because of the differences in the racial background between essentially educators and the kids who attend the schools. So that's where it's coming from. We certainly could broaden it, but then I think I don't want to say that it loses the meat of the intention, but it does take it a step away from where the state's minority recruitment program is currently resting. And I think, and Mr. Davis can speak to this if he wants a little bit, because the other part of the original language says that it essentially mirrors the composition of the school. But then that's not exactly, or the composition of the community, I would say, so that you would recruit teachers to mirror the composition of your community, but then that doesn't necessarily result in a necessarily very diverse teaching staff around here. So so that's specifically why we adopted, or the policy committee recommended the adoption of something like this, just to keep us attuned to it.
I don't love it. I see that race and class are the intended targets here.
Yes.
I apologize, but I can't hear who's talking and I don't know what they're saying.
Sorry, Robin. I was just being uncomfortable having a minority recruitment plan only covering race and class. But if that's what the state's intending, I guess I'm not going to throw a fit at our school following that template.
I mean, Mr. Howard, I leave it at your discretion as policy chair, but if you want us to at least bring this back to policy for some consideration of broadening the language, or we can look at the act concerning the minority teacher recruitment and retention that it's referencing at the bottom, that is up to you.
I mean, do we want to be recruiting people of other differences in our schools? We have 2 different policies.
I mean,
one saying a racial minority recruitment plan, and the other saying Amity is committed to a policy of inclusion in our staff or whatever. Like, is there another policy that does that?
So I believe the policy that comes immediately before this one, it essentially addresses that we recruit everybody.
Okay.
This one was specific to really to the alignment of that public act concerning minority teacher recruitment and retention. But yes, there was a policy that immediately preceded this that kind of addressed recruiting from a broad, diverse range of candidates.
Okay. So someone who was thinking about applying here wouldn't look at that and say, oh, my particular difference is not mentioned They must not be one.
Not in this particular
In this one,
policy,
they
it
would,
may
but
not,
the
but in the
proceeding
other
one
one, it's,
Okay.
it's,
All right.
Yeah.
I feel better. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Are there any programs that do like teacher swap outs from other areas around where you bring a teacher in for a month and they trade places and they kind of experience the other school system for a period of time?
Not that I know of, no.
Wouldn't that be like a professional development kind of?
That would be such a wonderful thing, just having so many family members work in such different, incredibly different school districts.
Wouldn't it be eye-opening for?
It's so
for a minute?
eye-opening for everyone just to see what problems different schools have. I agree with you 1,000%, but that's a tricky one. It's a union job, so, but that sure would be a good thing.
Aren't they all part of the same union?
No,
Yeah.
each individual school district has its own individual.
Oh, they don't cross
Teachers
over
union.
at all?
No.
Now, when we were negotiating with the Amity Teachers Union, not.
But there's no crossover at like a higher level for like New Haven County kind of thing?
No.
I don't think so.
There is not. Actually, New Haven teachers are under the AFT, not under CBA. That's totally different unions. I mean, and it's a good idea that the challenge is the continuity of instruction for the students of having a teacher move in and out. So, you know, but no, there's no such program as that I'm aware of.
Maybe a superintendent's meeting that, you know.
Just add that to your list.
No, but I mean, especially when we're doing online instruction, I mean, what a better time to do it than now and have some sort of crossover and look at it that way. And continuity, I mean, part of that could be bringing the students to help the new teacher to come up to speed with what the expectations are and what that looks like in their school. So I don't know. I thought it was a way to touch on this a little bit differently and maybe be more flexible and agile in doing it faster. And for any group, when, you know, just, I mean, whatever, any group, it doesn't have to be.
Okay, for board members as well.
We'll swap out board members. How about that? Yeah. Job share. Yeah.
All
Crevin?
questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to contribute a thought that I know that the Woodbridge School District has also been doing some work in this regard, and they've gone quite deep into it. So I wonder if Mr. Howard is going to consider taking it back to policy, if maybe we could even ask, you know, there was a time when we had quad Board of Ed meetings when we would get together with our peers along the lines of what Mr. Brow is suggesting. Maybe we could talk with the other boards of ed, the Bethany, Orange, and Woodbridge Board of Ed, so that we could, as a somewhat larger community, approach this topic, because I think it is very timely. I think it's a very important project to, maybe we do some collaboration here and work on policy together for that.
Well, and each, sorry, Mr. Davis, go ahead.
Just to pretty much get to what Sheila was mentioning, I don't think anyone who lives in our community truly understands the entire fabric of life going on in some of the communities around us. Sheila and I have experienced education in West Haven. She is a student, me as a teacher. And it is a tremendously different community, and it's right next door. So one of the things that I take back from being a parent is when my daughter went to college in Pennsylvania, a small school, and she came back after the first semester and she said, "I'm not learning anything. It's the same as Amity." And not academically, but learning about life. And I think this is the importance of exposing our students to a more diverse experience. And that's what I was trying to bring to this idea. So if you have to go back and talk about it a little bit more, get it right. I think that's something that we should do. And that's the whole purpose of this first read, is to look at the thing and get some input and then take it back and discuss it a little bit more. My suggestion would be that we stop at this point and suggest we send that back for greater discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. At this point,
That's it. We can move on to second reads unless anybody has any other comments on the first reads.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a handful of second reads to go through. The capital outlay 3560 at Ms. McCreven's request, we did have this reviewed by not just one, but two Board of Education attorneys to look at this to see if there was conflict between this revised policy and the existing AFC policy. I had directed the attorneys to only make changes to this policy and to not touch the AFC policy in their review. I do believe that they made a minor edit, and that was particularly in the paragraph, hang on, I have to find it. It was in the last paragraph, and I think they just added superintendent and or her designee. But the essential overall gist of this was that there was no conflict between this policy and the AFC policy as it was written. So that is 3560. The student records policy, again, we had mentioned this is an existing policy that needed to be updated to reflect current legislative changes. It's a fairly comprehensive policy that addresses many of the statutes and requirements that are related to FERPA, the Connecticut General Statutes. And again, this one was prepared by the board's attorney and reviewed by both the Director of Pupil Services and the Director of Counseling and myself, since we're the ones who are going to be ensconced in those records. Ms. Turner, or sorry, Dr. Turner, in answer to your question, 4111 is the recruitment and selection policy that's much broader. That includes the idea that we are going to recruit for heterogeneity of our population and our teaching staff. So this was the one that was the precursor to the minority recruitment policy. That one is essentially, it's been adapted from the CAVE recommendation. And then the contracts of employment was just an update to reflect the May 1st date, which was changed with respect to teacher tenure law within the last couple of years. And then the certification was also updated to reflect any legislative changes, as was the security check and fingerprinting. That particular policy underwent some significant revisions recently, and it now reflects all the latest legislative requirements.
Unless anyone has any issues with any of them, we'll take these all as one if someone would like to make that motion. Ms. Burke?
I'm sorry, are we having discussion or we need to make a motion first?
We would need to make a motion to take them all as one if that's something that the board would desire.
Mr. Davis?
I just had something that I wanted to discuss on the security check and fingerprinting. I just want to make sure there was an opportunity to do that.
Have a discussion first on that?
Well, it doesn't sound like we're going to have, it sounds like we'll be taking them all separately, because I don't see a motion to take them all together. So we can discuss each of them separately.
Okay.
So I think the first would be a motion to approve 3560.
Right. Someone wanna make that motion?
So, Mr. Chairman, just point of order, I had sent a message to the policy committee, I guess under the heading of public comment, with a further explanation of my concerns on this policy. I'm not sure if the rest of the board got my correspondence, though.
This is regarding capital outlay, Mr. Kerwin?
Yeah. Because at our previous meeting, we talked about it. I thought I would clarify because I was doing my best, but it was the end of the meeting last time, and here we are again at the end of the meeting. So I had some specific concerns and questions about it, and I was actually asking for some clarification. Not sure. I know, I understand that the policy committee did receive my correspondence, but I haven't heard back any further clarification, and I don't want to take time at this meeting either, because again, we're at the end of the meeting. So, but I don't know that the rest of the board even saw what I was talking about. So I feel like we're, we've done the same with the previous policy. We've kind of sent it back to committee, but we're going to continue to have questions about it. And it's a little difficult when only the committee members can discuss at the committee meetings and the rest of us can't. And then it comes back and it seems like we're not moving forward. So I don't want to delay this. I would like further information, but if we're going to vote to approve it tonight, we could always, I suppose, circle back and amend it at a later date.
And Ms. Farrow, correctly, that was sent as public comment or correspondence to policy?
I think I said public comment because
public comment as part of the policy committee meeting. So that would be included in the policy committee meeting minutes that were published after the committee met. So it would have been available to the board.
Okay, did we receive those minutes though? I don't remember seeing that.
They're posted on the website.
But they weren't emailed to us.
We typically do not email the minutes for every one of our meetings because we have a website where we post them all.
Okay.
Okay.
So is it too late to make a motion to put these all together? Because I just see no reason to vote individually 6 times. We can still discuss individually, correct?
Certainly.
Yes.
So I'd like to make a motion that we combine the second read 1 through 6.
Okay, thank you. We have a second.
I'll second.
Turner, thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Davis?
Now I'm gonna come up with a little issue with 4111A, which was the recruitment and selection, because of our discussion with the minority recruitment. I think there's some language in here that may create some conflict with that. So I would suggest we pull that out of there and consider it separately.
Okay.
Yes,
Mr. Dozer,
4111.
would you be acceptable to amending that?
Absolutely.
Motion? Okay,
From the amendment.
to take 4111 out.
A.
A, correct.
So it's just for 111. The A is a pagination.
Oh, I see.
Ah.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the table to accept them all as one. So you need to vote on that now.
Well, we have an amendment.
Correct. So it would be 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. Is that correct?
Correct. 1,
Correct.
2, 4, 5, and 6. Yes, correct. All right.
Yes.
So we ready? All right. Mr. Belfonte.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo.
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard.
Yes.
Dr. Turner.
Yes.
Ms. Burke.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Eichler.
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So now we need to make a motion to accept.
To
items
approve
1,
those.
2, 4, 5, and 6.
Yes.
Would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make a
Cardozo,
motion.
thank you.
I saw Mr. Reed, so perhaps he would like to second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Dr. Byers, can I just ask a question? Do we need a, I don't know this answer. I don't know if we need a second on that amendment. Ms. Cardozo may get in. I don't know if we need a second on it.
Dr. Turner did.
You make second on the amendment as well?
I second the.
Okay, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Yeah, friendly, yeah.
It's
Second
not,
that
it
motion. Remember that song?
I second that.
was correct.
So at this point now, we are in discussion for those, for accepting those. Seeing no discussion, we can. Mr. Krevin.
So back to policy 3560. It's just taking a look at the website for the policy committee meeting minutes, and it does say public comment email from board member, but it's not attached. So for the record.
Thank you. So I guess going forward, we have to make sure that that will be
Yes.
attached. Okay, thank you.
So if any board members are interested in what I wrote.
Well, I'm wondering if we should, I apologize for interrupting, but I mean, if we have a board member who has a concern, I obviously didn't see it, and I don't know if anyone else did. I just think we should give consideration to each other to at least see what was sent. Maybe we can put this back in for a second read for next month's meeting. Would be my suggestion.
Okay. So in that case, we would need someone to make a motion to.
Or if you want me to put it in the form, we're in the middle of a motion, so we're in the middle of discussion, but I guess I would make a motion to move it to next month's meeting. And for the piece of correspondence that was sent in by a board member to be provided to all of them.
So I think in order to.
Sorry, not correspondence, public comment.
I think at this point, because we have a motion to approve all of them, and we've already passed the motion to approve them separately, we need to vote on that motion.
Sure.
And if that motion fails, then the 3560, then we can make a new motion to consider 2, 4, 5, and 6 as a group.
So we as a group would have to vote, this would have to be voted against in order to have it moved to next month's meeting?
I believe where we are in the motion process, yes, because right now we had a motion on the table to consider them all together, which you approved. And now we have a motion on the table to approve them, and we're in
Correct,
the
but
process.
I would just like to say for the record that I think Sheila McCrevin was in the middle of this discussion on this when someone else on the board suddenly made a motion to take them all together. We were in the middle, she was in the middle of talking. I don't want to speak on her behalf, but she was, as I would for any board member, I believe she was in the middle of the discussion on this and someone else asked to take all of these together in the middle of that discussion. I don't think the discussion ever ended when we were doing them one at a time. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Sheila, can you refresh me? How did you vote on the on whether or not to take them together?
I voted in favor of taking them together, and I'm not looking to hijack the meeting, especially at this late hour. So my suggestion, and thank you, Ms. Burke, for jumping in, but my suggestion would be that we look to amend this later. So if we pass it tonight, we can go back and make changes to it. I think the information or the questions that I'm asking, if other board members also deem them of interest and would like explanation, could lead to further discussion about the policy. So I don't want to hold it up tonight. What is there is all right. I think that it opens more questions than it answers. So I'd like further information, but what is there now is acceptable. If we just proceed now, as long as we're keep a mind open, and I will be voting in favor of it so that I could ask for it to be reconsidered.
On that note, then I will withdraw my request for my motion.
Okay. So we at this point now.
Right now, we have a motion on the table to approve 8A1 through
1, 2, 4, 5, and 6.
Right.
Correct.
same.
I'm sorry, are we still having discussion on the other items now?
We certainly could, because it's still an open, discussion.
I just want to make sure, Robin, did you have something on the fingerprinting that you wanted to bring up?
That's why I'm asking, yes. And it was just really more of how it's written, not substantive. Let me just get to the page. I believe it's on page 99. Yeah. The last paragraph 1, the last sentence, which starts with "in addition, any person applying for employment," and then the following paragraph 2, that second paragraph, which is only one sentence. I could be wrong, but I read it 16 times. It looks like it's repeating what's in the last line of paragraph 1.
I'm sorry, Robin, your connection's not great. I can't quite hear what you're saying.
So
which
I'm asking the question if paragraph 2, where it says applicants for all positions, I'm reading that as repetitive of the last line of paragraph 1. Both say any person or applicants for all positions must submit to a record check of the Department of Children and Families Child Abuse and Neglect Registry. I feel like that next paragraph 2 is repeating what's in the last line of paragraph 1, but I could be wrong. And again, it's not substantive, it's just a matter of, I just thought it was repetitive.
It'd be that someone wanted to make certain that it was clear about certified or non-certified. I'm not sure
Yes,
what the intent was.
that may be part of it, although and again, I think that this one was one that policy took directly from CAVE because of the language that is so, this is just so prescribed through statute. So I'm not sure why CAVE felt the need to repeat it, other than that it does clarify that it's not just certified individuals who are typically the ones who work directly with students, but it is every single individual who is employed within a school district.
And again, I'm not sure why either. I just thought that was already said when they said any person applying, but if that's how they have it and that's how we want to keep it, it's fine with me. I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the board, that's all.
The only difference is certified versus non-certified, and before the person may be hired, and you could make that into one sentence in theory, but it's not, but I wouldn't, I mean. But, yeah.
It's not in conflict with anything, it's just
No.
reiterating and making it a little bit more specific.
It could be written better.
Yeah, agreed.
Good catch.
Any other discussion? Call the motion to accept these 5.
Actually, I just have one other question. I'm just curious if you could give me an example, because it talks about if a student is employed by Amity. Do we have students that are employed by the district? And then, can you give me an example of when that would happen?
Yes, so our student-led help desk, we have students who are employed by the district to run and work for our student-led help desk. Additionally, our students in our sales program will get a small paycheck for some of the work that they might do around the school as part of their vocational experience. And we employ students during the summer to oftentimes help us with our technology needs during the summertime. So we have a handful of students who are employed by the district.
Thank you. Just curious.
At this point, we can call the vote.
All right, Mr. Belfonte,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo, Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
Dr. Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Burke,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Eichler,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
That passes, thank you. So 4111, we'll be going back then. Moving on, personnel.
Yes, you have included in your packet a memo that it is my recommendation that the Board of Education non-renew the contract of Kristen Donovan, a Spanish teacher untenured at Amity Regional High School. This recommendation for non-renewal is related to a reduction in force due to the elimination of her position. By way of background information, over the course of the last 3 years, we have had a decrease in course requests for Spanish that have ultimately resulted in reducing and needing to reduce by a full FTE, essentially 5 Spanish classes. Some of this has also been related to our Spanish staff increasing their abilities to teach either ECE or AP classes. So we aren't quite as limited in what our faculty capacity can manage. Additionally, we have students who are increasingly choosing to take only 3 years of a language instead of 4. Some of that driven by the new graduation requirements that our students have to meet in all of the different areas, and less flexibility that we see in the graduation requirements. And also we are seeing students shift to other languages such as Mandarin and Latin. For next year, even with this reduction in force, our level, our honors level Spanish classes will have a class size of about 22 to 23 students. Our level 1 classes will still have about 17 students on average, and our level 2-3 classes will average 15 students. So the reduction in force is not resulting in unnecessarily large classes in the remaining Spanish classes that are there.
Thank you, Dr. Byers. Any questions regarding that? Mr. Reed.
Dr. Byers, do we do anything in this situation that, as an educator, I look at someone who's a non-tenured young teacher who's losing a position due to reduction in force. Do we do anything to help find a new position for her?
To help find a new position, no, but by doing this action publicly and to do it in this manner, this individual is going to be able to say it was not as a result of job performance, but because of a reduction in force, which is why we are having the conversation in public and why I'm asking the board to make this public recommendation, because that's actually the most beneficial thing that we can do for this individual to show that it's not as a result of qualifications or classroom expertise.
Thank you.
And you need a motion?
Yes.
Do.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Move that the contract of employment of Kristen Donovan not be renewed for the following year upon the expiration of the end of the 2021 school year, and that the superintendent of schools is directed to advise such person in writing of this action.
Second.
Thank you.
Ralph seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Belfanti?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cardozo?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Burke?
I'm going to abstain.
Mr. Davis?
I'm abstaining also.
Eichler?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kevin?
I'll abstain.
Reed?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. Any new business? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask, I know we have a couple of meetings left before the end of the fiscal year. Do we have a plan for any type of retreat for the board so we could do a self-evaluation?
Dr. Byers and I have not spoken about that in some time. We can certainly discuss that. We do not have a date to answer your question.
I'm not suggesting that it has to be a retreat. Usually seems to be about getting together in person. It would not have to be in person. We could do it by Zoom, but just an opportunity for the board to take a look at how we're performing. So before we go into the performance evaluation of the superintendent, for the board to first take a look and also discuss where we want to go in the coming year. So that's usually May, June. So maybe there's a little bit of time here, but I'd like us to fit that in if we could.
We will certainly talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other new business?
I just wondered, you mentioned you're going to be going to these weekly meetings that are updates on the Hvac project. I'm losing my English. Is there a mechanism for reporting back to the board? Is it going to be coming through monthly facilities reports?
Yeah, I
or
think-
more weekly updates?
So I'm happy to bring it back to the board, to the monthly board meetings. I think it'll be more like we have electrical cable coming in and we have to put the footers in for the concrete for the lights, and it'll be more sort of project related as far as like timing and delivery and digging up this or, putting in that. But if there's anything interesting, of course, I'll bring it back. You can ask me any questions you want about them. Let me, I only went to a couple it seems like a lifetime ago, a long time ago. And it was really about what did we want to have as far as colors on the field, because they had to order the materials and get things made. So they had markings that were friendly to soccer, lacrosse, and football or something like that, right? And that was, I think, the discussion. So I think it'll be things like along those lines as far as getting the project done, but I'd be happy to bring back anything and let me go to one and then see, and then let you guys know. And I don't know if I'll be able to go to all of them, but then maybe I can get a delegate, somebody else I can.
Right, I feel like I get a lot of questions on this and I don't know how information will come to me to answer the questions.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be much discussion around like safety of materials per se, right? So I don't think that will be, it'll be more sort of getting the project done and how to, make things happen on what schedule. And if there's any events at the school that are preventing us from, I don't know, bringing in heavy equipment or something like that.
Be asking us, if there's anything you think people might be asking us questions about, if you can just pass that on,
Oh, of
that would
course.
be great.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and that's why I mentioned the thing next week for the Board of Selectmen, and I think we should also think about maybe doing something at a meeting where we can talk about it and bring out other information in. If we've got more at that point, we can sum that up and bring that to the board as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Cool, Mr. Brown, you chose colors last year, you chose black and gold.
Wait a minute, are those the school colors?
Yes.
Man, oh man, we've got to cancel the order now. Actually, I have something that struck me, and it's probably not that I was just going to tell you afterward, but we have items for new meetings in theory. We have a history of talking about the storage containers on the facility.
Yes.
Right? And how they've grown, and our old board member, Jim, would bring it up constantly.
Correct.
And I had an idea, and I wanted to throw it out there publicly so everybody thinks about it. Why can't, if we're renting them, I understand, but maybe if we're renting them, we should buy them because maybe we should own them. But why can't we paint them and put them in gold and black? And put Amity on the side, and it could be a school project, it could be a work project, it could be, but I was just thinking they would look so much nicer if they were all tied into the color scheme of the school and matched, and then they would kind of blend in a little better, and they could show some spirit for the whatever they've got, and or if they're stuff for that team, or that if it's football or if it's baseball or if it's just grass cutting or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think painting them would be really nice.
I would imagine it would be an option if we own them, but if we don't own them, probably wouldn't be.
Well, and that's what I mean. I mean, if we own them, we could maybe work towards that. If we don't own them, then maybe there's something we can do to bridge that. They may not care.
Absolutely. Worthy of discussion, for sure.
Yeah. So it's just that new business kind of thing. So.
Absolutely. Any other new business? Seeing none, we'll move on to items for the next agenda, to meeting no later than April 30th. And we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Brown, thank you. We have a second.
I'll second that.
Afraid that we were gonna be here all night.
Nobody wants to go home.
Thank you, everyone.
All in favor, if you could just raise hands. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, folks.
Excellent, thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.